Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. And the people were exiles, refugees, sitting in a foreign land, a land called Babylon. But they had cried their tears, and though they longed and longed to touch sweet Jerusalem, God said 70 years. So keep moving on and care for this land. Make the enemy your friend like it will be in the end, and you will find peace, and yes, even more, one day your children will all be restored. If you will just listen as you once failed to do, the word refugee will no longer mean you. But until then, make your enemy your friend and stay who you are. Then Nebuchadnezzar, he was the king, the master of Babylon, did a quite kingly thing. He erected a statue that showed off his wealth and demanded the worship of a god like himself. That sounds a bit strange, but kings did this back then. They demanded the nations give worship to them. 60 cubits high. It was 60 cubits high. I don't know my cubits, but that's high as the sky. And he called for the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all of the officials of the provinces. He called them to come and to worship this thing. And the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the counselors, the treasurers and the justices and the magistrates all came, and all the officials. They all did the same. And the herald said, Our king of renown, commands you, O people, nations, that when you hear the sound of the horn and the pipe and the lyre and the trigon and the harp and the drum and all the ensemble to fall, you will fall, and worship the God who is King of us all. And if you do not worship as you are required, you'll find yourself roasting in a furnace of fire. Then the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the drum, and the ensemble did sing. And the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the justices and the magistrates and the officials and all the people their worship did bring. But where were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Oh no. God had said 70 years, stay who you are. And these children of Israel, they were about to get caught doing just that. There's a way in the world. There's a way, and we all know it. The world says behave. The world says play the game. The world says if you want comfort, riches, luxury, or even just to get by, play the game. And they'll set up a God and even name him Jesus, but then they'll do all kinds of things that Jesus never teaches, and they'll teach you to measure people, to see what they're worth, so that certain people can be the ones hurt. And we can all get caught up in the timbrel and the lyre, in the sound of the glory and the dreams we desire, and see the least of all as a problem of others, and think the way ahead comes with stepping on our brothers, ignoring the cries of our sisters at night, whose children are hurting, whose bellies are light, who don't make the grade and don't understand why they are called worthless in this foreign land, who would be so pleased to just get a little, but they don't make the measure. They don't make the measure. They don't make the measure in the game. They are drivel. But in our story, these three had risen from that dust. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, refugees who had earned the king's trust. But he didn't like it when they didn't obey. And to dust he might have them return on that day, but he gave them a chance. Just one chance. He said, Shadrach, hear the song of the horn, pipe, and lyre. Meshach, hear the trigon, the harp. Get inspired. Abednego, you love the drums so. Join your brothers and the people. Just let your love show. But the children of Israel, the children of Abraham, the children of Sarah, Rebekah, Leah, and Rachel said no. If God can save us, let that be God's will. If God cannot, we will worship God still. And the king was enraged. I raised you from the dust. To ash you will return. To ash you will burn. In ash you will learn. In ash I will write your names on your graves for treating a king and the gods in this way. And the furnace grew hot, and the flames lifted higher, and bound hand and foot. Shadrach hit the fire, and bound hand and foot. Meshach went in, and bound up Abednego, a victim of sin, or that's what they called it, an arrogant sin for choosing a God that never could win. And they thought the story was over. But the king rose up, shocked at what he saw. 4 men in the fire. 4 men in the fire. 4 men in the fire. There should have been 3. But the one man glowed brighter with a warm light of peace. The servants fell down. The 4th looked like a god, and the king cried, "Come out!" And through a river of fire 3 Israelites trod. I know this is the end. But be reminded again. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego might be a tale from long ago, but there is a lesson for us to hear, especially as Advent draws a birth near. God is coming and bringing a light. God is coming and all is not right. God is coming and tells us to turn back to the way, seek Jesus and learn. For the years might be 70, and they might be 2, when the haughty rejoice and take more than their due. But God will remember the plight of the poor, and they will be saved by a Savior adored. And we want to be on the side of the right and not be deluded by the world's glitz and might. For as Nebuchadnezzar found on that day, the strength of the world before God melts away. And if we are to be the children of light, the plight of the poor must become our own plight.